Alright guys, welcome back to Formula 1 News. It's all going on at the moment with so many rumours coming out in the last day or so as to what the driver lineups are going to be next year, 2025 and even beyond that. And speaking of 2026, the new engine regulations, again, more drama here between Red Bull and Mercedes, Christian Horner and Toto Wolff. This time there's some very good sources suggesting that the engines in 2026 will be led up by Mercedes. Currently, based on the current benchmarks, they have the strongest power unit. Red Bull are somewhat significantly behind. Is this the real reason why Red Bull and Christian Horner are playing all these politics games right now? Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always. So if you guys aren't familiar with the stories of the last couple of days, it's all been happening. Firstly, Daniel Ricciardo gets his seat at Alpha Tauri. We also have talks yesterday that Red Bull have been speaking to both Charles Leclerc and Lando Norris to try and lock one of these guys down probably from 2025. Also though, apparently they want Alex Albon back. I don't understand. I feel like Alex Albon was like harshly done by in that Red Bull camp. Another one who goes into the Helmut Marko meat grinder, gets chewed up and spat out. And now I think Helmut Marko just a few days ago said, pretty unfortunate that Albon's stuck in a contract with Williams until 2025 or whatever it is. And apparently they want him back again. And Albon has said, no, you know what guys, I don't even want to go back to Red Bull. I like it where I am. And supposedly, according to a pretty solid source actually, accredited F1 media, he's turned this down and said, you know what guys, I don't want to go back to Red Bull because I imagine that would be an Alpha Tauri seat. They could stick him alongside Max in the Red Bull again. That'd be exciting and I feel like he'd do a better job this time around. Does he want to do that? Do they really want Norris or Leclerc in that seat, as we talked about yesterday, the dream team or whatever that they might be trying to put together? And maybe Albon's plan is, because I don't think he realistically expects Williams to be winning any championships in the next 5 years. But maybe his plan is to get the Mercedes seat, right? Because you would think that when Hamilton does retire, they will look to Williams as they have done many times before. Albon could be a good possibility there, of course. Lando Norris is another one. And Norris, apparently, this is Joe Soward saying this. So you've always got to take this stuff with a bit of a grain of salt. Doesn't he admits that these are just straight up rumours on the street. There's no solid sources backing these conversations. But this is the talk of the paddock effectively as it stands, that Lando Norris has some sort of pre-contract relationship with Ferrari already in place. From presumably 2026 it would be, after his contract is up at McLaren, he might be looking at that. I would feel, I mean look, I don't really want Norris to go to Ferrari because if he has to suffer through the pain of McLaren and then join Ferrari, it might be a bit tough on him, to be honest. I would love to see a world in which Hamilton gets his 8th or whatever, retires in the next several years, Norris comes in alongside Russell, and then Leclerc goes to Red Bull alongside Max. That would be the dream as far as I'm concerned. I don't really know what Ferrari would do in that circumstance. Maybe they could get Albon or something, but I don't really have that much faith in Ferrari, to be honest, to put together something that can actually win a championship, but who knows? Maybe the tide will turn. So those are the rumours that Lando has had some discussions with Ferrari to such an extent that there may be some sort of pre-contract in place where is a possibility in the near future. In addition, Sainz to Audi in 2025. So Sauber is probably going to rebrand to something much closer to Audi much sooner than Audi actually coming as the engine supplier from 2026. And others think that Charles Leclerc will go mad if he stays where he is at Ferrari and that Mercedes would love to have him. So Joe says, look, he's merely pointing out the chit-chat, not saying any of this is true, so take it with a grain of salt. But there is a lot going on right now, and he even says that Liam Lawson is likely to get a drive at Alpha Tauri next year. So Danny Rick and Yuki Tsunoda, one of those two will come out of the end of this season looking pretty bad relative to the other. Like if Tsunoda doesn't dispatch Ricciardo, he's probably never getting the Red Bull seat. If Ricciardo doesn't dispatch Tsunoda, then Red Bull's probably not getting another seat in Formula 1 again. So this is where Red Bull have to figure out what they're going to do. Liam Lawson potentially to Alpha Tauri is a likely possibility. So yeah, it's all going on as I've just mentioned. There's also this on some more street tracks. Unfortunately, every week we're talking about a new street track. Emmanuel Macron, president of France, wants another French Grand Prix to come back. But this is the thing with all these countries now. You can't just get a Grand Prix at Paul Ricard. A decent track, not a great track, but a decent enough track. If they're going to do it in France, it's going to be a street track. That's just how it is, unfortunately, nowadays. And they want to do it in Nice, potentially. There's also the rumour going around that it's been confirmed that a Madrid Grand Prix is going to happen. This, I'm sure, would replace Barcelona. If they are going to do this, please have some sort of cycle where it goes Madrid and then Barcelona. But I guess like so many of these now, they just want them to be in city centres so they can bring all the audiences in and make it a real glitz and glamour fair like Vegas and Miami and stuff like this. This apparently is what the track layout is going to look like. I'm sure it's going to be an absolute disaster, whatever happens here, but apparently it's going to happen, and that probably means Barcelona is gone. Just when they made it good, got rid of the chicane and made it a good track again, they've, apparently going to remove it. I don't know what that means for testing. Mercedes, I'm sure, wouldn't be happy because Barcelona is the only track their car seems to work particularly well at, or at least be particularly consistent at. So there's that going on. But let's dive into the 2026 power units, because a big talking point, these new regulations for the engines, because looking back to 2014, we know what happened then. Mercedes leapfrogged the rest, started off with a dominant power unit that was only over time caught up, various small changes were made, but they came out the gate swinging. And if there's any team that's probably in the most risk of not doing a great job, Red Bull might be that team, because Mercedes you'd expect they'd do a good job. You would expect that Honda will also deliver a solid engine with Aston Martin that they're partnering with. Ferrari are Ferrari, they know how to build an engine, it might explode, but it's going to be pretty fast. Then Audi are coming in, that's a bit of a question mark. And then you've got Red Bull Ford, not Red Bull Honda, right? No relationship there anymore. It's Red Bull powertrains with Ford. So there are some debates about this, and especially when we start to see the politics games. Toto Wolff has said there is 0% chance these regulations change. We discussed a few days ago exactly what this means, but basically the ICE, the combustion engine, it's still a 1.6 litre V6 turbocharged, but they've reduced the amount of fuel flow, so it produces only about 550 horsepower rather than about 860 that it presently does, and the rest of the 1,000 horsepower comes now from a battery. So there's going to be a much heavier reliance on the electrical component of the power unit, and this has raised questions, and especially Horner and Verstappen, and you've got to wonder what the motivation for that might be, that they're not going to be very good. It's going to be a Frankenstein's monster, the engine's going to be terrible, they're going to get halfway down the Monza straight and run out of battery, and their car's it's just going to look like an embarrassment for the sport. So Toto Wolff says, no, it's not. Don't know what you're talking about, mate. Otmar also says, I disagree with Horner on this. We like the way it's going. But some other manufacturers have also expressed similar possibilities for the limitations. Then people came back and Horner and said, well, you're only saying this because your engine is behind the curve. And Wolff even went as far to say that Horner is frightened that they're going to bottle it. And then he basically just says that's scaremongering here, Horner, and also doubles down to say that he understands more about the engines than Toto Wolff does, because Toto Wolff is, in his words, a customer, which, okay, it's not strictly true, really. I mean, Toto Wolff does lead up the motorsport division at Mercedes, but he's not technically leading up that HPP, the Mercedes High Performance Powertrains project, so technically his team is buying engines from them. It's not like Toto Wolff doesn't know what's going on. It's not like he doesn't have regular conversations with these guys. But Horner's point was, I run our power unit division. I know what's going on. I know the limitations and the issues. Toto Wolff is a customer and therefore he doesn't. So you guys know how it goes with these two. They're always playing games. And then he also went on to say at the time that Toto's only interested in self-performance. I'm more interested in the sport rather than self-gain, which is quite the quote from Christian Horner. You guys know how they play the game. Now, Verstappen says, it'll be alright. We're starting at the right time. We're ahead of schedule, he says, on this engine development. We are on the right track. And then we fast forward to the present day with a big story from AMUS, Auto, Motor and Sport. When these guys say stuff, there is a lot behind it, right? Very solid sources, very reputable outlet. And they're talking about the rumours on the power deficits, Horner versus Wolff, the engines in 2026 and beyond. And the rumours say that indeed, as we might have speculated, the Red Bull powertrain's combustion engine is around about 10 horsepower below the target they're looking for. Now 10 HP isn't a massive deal, it's obviously significant, but it's not mega. Where I'm more interested is the electrical size, because I'm not so convinced that Red Bull without Honda and with Ford are really going to do, maybe Ford could do a good job there, but I think that compared to Honda, compared to Mercedes, I'm not convinced that they're going to be able to come up with a great electrical unit as they have at the moment. And also their combustion engine is apparently below the target. Red Bull's opponents believe that they're behind schedule, hence Horner lobbying for a rule change or trying to delay the engine rules, which makes sense, right? I mean, you look at what Horner's saying, there's obviously ulterior motives at play there. This is what many people will be like, oh, here we go again, though, when sources are saying that Mercedes are yet again the most advanced in this new engine development. And I think this is also probably expected, because the way that Toto Wolff is talking about this, with all the confidence he has for these new era of regulations, sounds like a man who's very confident that his team has it under wraps. Now, whether this means we're going to have a repeat of 2014 to 2016, where the Mercedes engine was so good, they ran it in idle mode to try and prevent other teams realizing they had such a performance advantage. Eventually, teams figured it out and made some advances, and there were various things done to try and hold back Mercedes, but they absolutely nailed the turbo hybrid era when it arrived in 2014. We now have still a turbo hybrid era, but a new iteration of it, and if there's any team you would think would nail it more than anyone, it's probably Mercedes. And that's what the sources seem to say. So what do you guys think about this, right? Red Bull might be in a bit of a tricky spot. That's probably why we're hearing all these comments from Horner, but still, it's plenty of years away. We're in 2023. There's still the rest of this season, 2024 and 2025, before the 2026 engine regulations come along, and even then, there's going to be vastly different aerodynamic rules at the time. What does that mean for how important the engine is? Difficult to say, but it's going to be important, as engines always are, and right now Mercedes again are seemingly leading the charge. Whether that's going to be a return to dominance of Mercedes in 2026, it feels like if there's a car that's going to have the best chance right now of starting off on the right foot in 2026, it's probably the Mercedes, and maybe that's what it's going to take to end the Red Bull dominance that we are presently experiencing. Otmar, though, says from Renault, kind of funny really, because often Renault, when they say and do things, it turns out that what they say is actually not in their own best interests, but they believe that, speaking to the powertrain guys, we want to keep it as is. We're happy with the rules as they are, and I would imagine that it's unlikely to be changed. So as hard as Horner's going to try, if Renault, another manufacturer I didn't even mention so far, to be honest, because somehow they just feel so anonymous in the sport at times, if they're saying no, we like these rules as is, if Mercedes are saying no, we certainly like these rules as is and we want them introduced in 2026, I doubt anything is going to be done about Horner's suggestions, unless all the other teams also agree that they need to make tweaks here, but I don't think that will be the case. They've been working on this for years. The other piece of the puzzle, though, is what it means for the aero regulations. There's all this talk about removable or like movable aero, where the front and the rear wings can move in such a way to, instead of DRS, the car in front's wings would move in such a way to reduce its downforce, which sounds like an absolute disaster, but maybe that's what's going to happen. But also with the way the cars are looking to be designed, there'll be significantly less air resistance, which means that slipstreaming is effectively going to disappear, apparently. I'm sure there'll always be some slipstream effect, and I'm sure they'll figure out a way to make the racing still good. So it's going to be different, right, is what it is. Now, whether that's bad, whether that's good, we don't really know as it stands. But the teams that are looking good at the moment with their engines and power units and all this, and their aero, are probably more on the side of, oh, let's just try and keep it as similar as we possibly can, whereas other teams, let's say Mercedes, are probably quite keen to go through another period of engine changes, especially when they might well be leading the pack, to our understanding at the moment. So very much enjoy your thoughts in the comments below. Just wanted to close out with this. I thought was pretty funny, really. The quickest times from the Silverstone's Pirelli test. So Hülkenberg, Magnussen, Sargent, Albon, Fittipaldi, all really just doing their programs right. I don't imagine any of these guys are especially pushing, but Daniel Ricciardo, knowing that a potential job is on the line here, getting a seat in Formula 1, was absolutely blitzing it like prime Ronaldo, and yeah, 1:27.4, like 6 seconds faster than Fittipaldi's fastest lap attempt, which is pretty funny to think that Ricciardo is just absolutely cooking when his, the possibility of getting into that Alpha Tauri, or maybe even the Red Bull in the future, was on the line. Very much enjoyed to hear your thoughts in the comments. Hit the like button if you enjoyed, subscribe if you're new, take care, and I'll see you next time.